Welcome to Weathered Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome into episode 8 of Weathered Questions. We're so glad you're with us. My name is Jan Kaj, a meteorologist for about 8 years in the broadcast world, joined by Kai O'Mara, who I had the pleasure of working with for about half of my time in the broadcast world. Kai, how are you doing today?
Doing well, doing very well. It's been a busy month for sure. But doing great, staying busy at work, all the above. Summer keeps flying by. The back to school sales are filling. I just, in 3 weeks, they're going back.
I know, it's wild.
They're going back. So
absolutely
if you're a parent, you understand. And if you're a parent like me and there's just a little bit of giddiness in your voice, like, oh my gosh, get out of my house and go to school, I won't hide my feelings. There's excitement there. There's excitement there. And any parent's going to tell you that they get a little excited when it comes to back to school time, get back in that routine. So important.
See, I don't have any kids, but I do get excited about back to school time because I love shopping for office supplies. Like, there is nothing better than getting a new set of cool pens. Oh,
you just like best. Organizing in general. Okay. All right. Hang on. We're going to just take a little left-hand turn here.
Okay.
So during our time in television, if there was ever something that needed to be organized, I wouldn't touch it. Joe wouldn't touch it. Yeah. Justin wouldn't touch it. You know who did it? Jan did it.
Yep.
Jan did it. And not only, guys, would she do it, it was like done that day. I go walk for a coffee and come back and she'd go, what do you think of this? Like, oh gosh. Okay.
What can I say? If you give me a task, I'll do it.
You are gifted in that sense. There's no question about it.
I do have an email saved from you somewhere, Kai, that says like, you are scary at how much you organize, or you are scary good at organizing or something. So I take very pride. I'm very proud.
You are. And I will give you public credit now that you have also organized and developed our skeletons for this show, meaning the rundowns, which means that all I have to do is glance at the monitor.
Hey, I love a spreadsheet.
Yes, you do. It's very, very simple. We've got a good little harmony going on here to get some
absolutely
good content on the air.
For sure. We hope you're enjoying listening, and thank you for coming along for this. If you have been enjoying, have positive feedback or a question to share, please absolutely let us know. You can always write us through weatheredquestions@gmail.com. You can also leave a review. Those 5-star reviews go a long way in helping other people find the podcast. And hey, another thing that helps other people find it, word of mouth. Tell your friends, tell your family. We would love for them to be aware of this and to get in on the fun as well. A couple of reviews came in recently from Harrison85, as well as Flying ISU. They say, the podcast is so cool. It helps me learn about why weather is what it is. Thanks, Harrison. And then Jan and Kai have developed a great podcast that explains a lot of common questions in a welcoming, insightful, and fun format. I highly suggest to anyone. So thank you for both of those. We love to know that you are enjoying it. We're really doing this just because we love weather and we want to share our knowledge with people, but it's even more rewarding when we know that other people are enjoying it on the flip side. So thank you again for those reviews, as well as your questions that come in through our email.
That's right. Any feedback is good feedback in my world. So we appreciate all that. And I like the fact that the reviews have both said the why behind the weather, because that's the whole reason we started this, was you and I would get common weather questions and we'd get them over and over and over again. And it's time to answer them. And it's time to try and teach a little bit more about how the atmosphere operates. So I'll echo what Jan said, encouraging everybody to submit those questions. And we always want to know what's on your radar. And we'll get to the email again. It's weatheredquestions@gmail.com. Both Jan and I have access to the mailbox. So we'll see them when they come in, and you can join our conversation. There's a really good chance we'll get right here on the podcast too. But let's jump into our very first question here this week. We are still very much in severe weather season. In fact, maybe it's not in the traditional sense of April and May where you've got a 30 or 40 degree swing in temperature, but we're still very much in severe weather season with hail and wind and tornadoes that can still happen. So the question is, can you explain, quote, the cap you talk about leading up to severe weather? Jan?
Yeah, so we do. We talk about that fictitious cap a lot, and it's not because we're super cool and we say no cap or anything like that. I don't even really truly know what that means anymore as a proud millennial, but that's it. We're not that hip. We're not that cool. We just
This is the first
have
I've
this.
heard of that.
Oh, have you
Never
not?
heard of it.
Ask your girls, Kai.
It's cap.
They're,
Oh my
they're-
gosh.
yeah, like no cap. Like
no
again,
cap.
I
To me, that's what I'm wearing right now. No cap.
all right. You ask
I have
your
no
girls.
cap.
Report back.
Oh my gosh. All right. That's on the to-do list. Okay, continue. Now that
But
I've gotten us off track.
When we do have a cap, in terms of weather, at least, what that means is a warm layer of air that's in our atmosphere, and essentially what it's doing is it is stopping storms from developing. So that's why we talk about it, is because if that cap is there, we can't get storms. Now, the reason that we talk about it so much is if it's there for a little while and something gets rid of it, then all of a sudden we have really, really strong storms. So what happens? Warm air rises. That's a very basic concept that a lot of people know. We have the sun heating the earth, the warm air rises up, and it rises up into the atmosphere. However, if you have a separate layer of air further up into the atmosphere, around 10,000 feet or so, that is warmer than that rising air no longer rises because it can't, right? It's cooler than the air above it. So it's not going to rise up anymore. That layer is exactly what we call the cap. And essentially, energy just builds up under that cap, that warm air that's rising that just kind of is halted. And that is what fuels our storms. So if it's just sitting there, the cap stays there all day, all night, however long, nothing happens. However, that energy continues to build up and build up and build up under it. And if that cap goes away, there's a couple different mechanisms that we can get to what we call break the cap. And that's when we get what we would refer to as explosive thunderstorm development, because those storms can all of a sudden just fire up really quick. They can build upward. They have a lot of energy to work with. And so that's what we would refer to as the cap, and why it's so important, because it can both stop storms entirely from forming, and it can also fuel storms, very strong storms, once you get rid of it. And the way I like to think about it, the easiest way, if you take a bottle of pop or a can of pop and you shake it without it being open, you're building up a lot of energy in it. Everybody knows what's going to happen when you open that, right? It's going to have explosive bubbles and pop everywhere. But as long as the cap's on, nothing's going to happen. That energy is building up, building up, building up. But once you take that cap off, that's what, again, kind of the equivalent of breaking the cap in the atmosphere. And that's when you get that explosive thunderstorm development, because all that energy is all of a sudden released. So that's a really basic way to kind of understand what's happening in our atmosphere with something that we all know. And please don't prank anybody on our behalf.
Yeah, there you go. I love your explanation. And I think it's spot on. I've never thought about the bottle of pop thing before.
Yeah, I love that one. It's very tangible.
Yeah, I've never even thought about that, but you're exactly right. And I actually ran a little bit of math on this quite a while ago. It was back in April when we had a cap situation where a front came through, there was severe weather forecast, and not only did we not get any severe weather, it did not even rain. And it was the cap that really played a big role there. And so I actually laid it out and did the math on it when it was about 80 degrees at the ground and a dew point of 64. We had some broken clouds around 4,000 feet. And so there are two different rates of temperature change that can really happen with just basic air. If it's dry, it's going to cool down faster. But then once it gets saturated, there's a series of complications there that as that saturated air rises, it cools at less of a rate because it's giving off water and giving off some heat. But the bottom line is, if we had a layer of warm air aloft around, let's say 10 Celsius or 50 Fahrenheit, I calculated that the air, when it was being lifted up there and cooling, actually landed around 7 to 9 Celsius. And to what your point was, now you're cooler than the air around you. Now the air is down in the basement, and that cool air does not come up into the first floor. And as a result, it doesn't break through. If you redo the math equation and instead of 80 degrees, you go up to about 92 or 93, look out. You've got an afternoon in front of you. But that's what that cap is. It is nothing physical. I do want to point that out.
Yes.
I have had a question about that before. It's not a layer. It is not a bubble. It is not a film. It is not a layer of plastic or metal. It's not a dome. It's not a UFO. It's a layer of warm air aloft that essentially caps convection is what we talk about. And sometimes on a warm summer day, you can watch the cumulus clouds build up and then they'll hit that level and they'll start toppling over. And you know right there that they're having the same problems that storms do. They just can't get through that warm air. And part of the geography in the upper Midwest is because we've got the plains and the Rockies off to our west. Some dry air comes off of those plateaus. And that's how we can, to your point, be capped all the way until maybe 4 or 5 o'clock. And then boom, it's go time. So great question. Great answers, I think. And I hope that kind of helps solve that mystery.
Yeah.
What
if
the
it
cap
sparked
is.
a new question for you, if you're curious about something else we mentioned, because we did mention quite a few various things in meteorology there, feel free to submit a follow-up question to weatheredquestions@gmail.com. All right, let's move on to our next one, kind of staying on the topic of summertime storms. Kai, what is heat lightning?
Great question. It is not necessarily lightning that's just because it's hot out. Otherwise, every summer day would be a big problem. Heat lightning is actually a myth. Okay. It's a distant thunderstorm. It's a distant thunderstorm. And I can kind of explain some of this for you coming up. First off, I will tell you, so you and I worked together both at KCRG in Cedar Rapids, and I lived on the north end of town. You lived on the south side. So when you drive to work, you'd have to drive from south to north. When I drove to work, I had to drive from north to south. And there was one morning where there was a huge cluster of thunderstorms down by St. Louis. And I'm driving down 380 at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm seeing lightning illuminating my south sky. And I'm going, I busted. Oh my gosh, there's going to be so much hate mail. I busted tonight. Like Iowa City's getting rocked. No, they were clear down in St. Louis.
Yep.
So the combination of tall cloud tops and just a slight curvature of the earth going down that way allowed me to see that far. But here's the deal. In order to get thunder, we have to have lightning. But what happens if you're so far away from the lightning that you can't hear the sound wave anymore? That's what heat lightning is.
Exactly.
It's very simple. It's very simple. And the reason why it came out and kind of was given that name, heat lightning, is because you tend to see it a lot on warm summer nights of distant thunderstorms where the lightning is much more luminous. But if you're 20, 30 miles away, that sound wave, as it propagates out, is going to dampen more and more and more and more. And eventually you can't hear it. And so that's where this whole term came from.
Yep. So it has nothing to do with lightning being caused by heat. It just happens to be associated with it based on time of year. So it's one of those, association does not equal causation, or correlation does not equal causation kind of situations where it just happens to happen during the summertime. We don't get that many thunderstorms during the winter. Atmospheric dynamics just aren't very good for it. Other times of year when maybe we do get thunderstorms, maybe we're a little bit more prone to cloud cover or something like that. So it's just, we have more chance at seeing those storms far away because of the clear skies, maybe because you're outside enjoying a summer evening bonfire or something like that. So it's just more eyes or more ability to see that lightning, but not hear the thunder. But there is never a time that you can have lightning without thunder. You're just too far to actually hear the thunder in this case.
Right. And that's also important for outdoor events and athletic events and maybe outdoor festivals, too, that there might be some lightning in the region. But if it's 60 or 70 miles to the north, obviously you're still in a very safe range. At that point, though, now that you do have lightning in the distant sky, it's probably a good idea to at least have somebody there that knows what they're doing to at least read a radar or, call your local weather service office and say, what do we got going on tonight? How many hours out is it? Something like that. So the sky gives us lots of clues, and heat lightning is one of those things. It's just a distant lightning strike. It's nothing to do with the heat itself, but it's a distant lightning strike that our ears cannot hear the sound wave, which means we can't hear the thunder.
Exactly. And if you missed episode 1.4 and you want to know how far away lightning actually can strike, head back there and we'll answer that one for you over the trivia question, which is a perfect segue into today's trivia question. So today we're asking you a little bit more about severe storms during the summer. What do meteorologists refer to energy in the atmosphere that severe storms can use? So what is it called? The energy in the atmosphere. What do we call that as meteorologists that severe storms fire off of? Your answer options today, we're making it multiple choice again. A, mask, B, cape, C, sin, or D, pep. We'll have your answer in just a bit.
A quick word from our sponsor here of this episode, Hungry? After more than 20 years of farmers market success, come on over to the Salsa Guy Cafe, located at 2874 Mount Vernon Road Southeast in Cedar Rapids. I might recommend the BLT Conquistador. On top of that, they serve some of the best salsa, sandwiches, and sauces that you'll ever consume. And don't forget about Tim Palmer's famous Alfalfa Experience. Open 10:30 to 7:30, Tuesday through Saturday, and with a second location coming soon. It's the Salsa Guy Cafe.
Today's trivia question.
All right, welcome back. For today's trivia question, we asked you, as meteorologists, we refer to energy in the atmosphere that severe storms use to fire off as what? What do we refer to it as? So your answer options were A, mask, B, cape, C, sin, or D, pep. And the answer for that one is cape. So it actually stands for something. It's a, what is that called when the letters stand for something? I can't even think of what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Well,
is it?
This is why we're scientists and not English majors.
I'm not sure. I'll have to consult on that one.
Anywho, it stands for convective available potential energy. So CAPE, CAPE. So yeah, I threw mask in there because a lot of times we like to talk about superheroes and fun things with cape. But in this case, it's the available potential energy for convection. So that's what we call it, convective available potential energy, or CAPE.
Yep. And the higher the number, typically the more we're going to see eyebrows being raised one way or the other in terms of how strong storms could be. But something along those lines, especially with CAPE, it doesn't guarantee a storm's going to happen. It just means if one happens to get going, there's a lot of potential energy available for convection. That's another way to think about that. So when you do have high values of CAPE, it does tend to get a little bit interesting. But when you're really humid, that's when you actually have some tremendously high values of CAPE. And if you're capped, like we just talked about earlier in the episode, guess what? It just sits down there and isn't used at all. So even if something is available, it doesn't mean it's ready to be used. Like, for example, I could potentially eat a whole rack of ribs and 3 ears of sweet corn at 9 o'clock at night.
I'll believe
There's always a potential. I'm not going to, because the availability in my stomach is not good at that time of night, but I could do it. I could potentially do it. And so to me, the CAPE numbers, if you're a weather weenie and you like to go look at forecast models and things, that's fine. Typically you kind of look over 1,000 to look for general thunderstorms. And if you start getting above 2,000, 3,000, you start getting more towards kind of a severe weather situation at that point. And sometimes you see these really high values of 5 or 6 or 7,000. And some of those could actually be driven by high humidity or maybe some artifacts in the models. Maybe the models are overdoing something, but convective available potential energy. That's it.
And that's exactly, like, you referred to that CAP question that we answered at the start of the episode. When you're capped, you're building that available potential energy. And once that cap erodes away, if you have those really high values, that's again when you get those explosive storms. So those two both go hand in hand with each other. All right. Moving on to our third question for the day. Why do the coldest and hottest days of the year happen about a month after the solstice? Brian wrote this question in from Waukee. Thanks, Brian, for asking that question. So the coldest and hottest days of the year, you'd think maybe they happen right around the first day of summer or the first day of winter, respectively. But why do they happen a little bit after that, Kai?
Well, it's a very good question. And thanks, Brian, for submitting that. So when it comes right down to our temperatures, we think about the very basics of how things warm and how things cool. So if we are dealing with, let's say, a July day, the sun heats the ground heats the air above it. It's a process called conduction, and then it winds up rising. Now, if we are going through a calendar year, there is something called temperature lag. And it's one of the chief reasons why the vernal equinox and autumnal equinox, while we have very similar hours of the day, wildly different weather. And the reason being is because daylight isn't everything. Because if that ground is as warm as it is, it's very easy for a heat wave to persist well into September. On the flip side, that's why it's so darn difficult coming out of winter that even if you've got a nice sunny March day, it's tough to really get past about 75 unless you've got a ton of wind to help you out, even though that sun angle is exactly the same. So it really has to do with ground temperature is what it is. Ground temperature and how much it's able to conduct and eventually warm you up.
Exactly. So I like to think of it like, if you're putting a pot on the stove, right, it's not going to instantly boil. You have to heat the pot, the ground, which heats the air above it, the water. And so, it takes time, right? Everything has to heat through before it can heat the other component. And then even after you take that boiling pot off, maybe it's not quite boiling still, but it still stays hot for a while, right? It retains that heat. So as the sun heats the ground, heats the earth, which heats the air above it, everything kind of holds on to that heat for a little while longer before it actually starts to cool down. And we can even see a mini version of that every single day, right? The hottest part of the day or the coldest part of the day isn't when the sun angle is the highest or the lowest. It's a little bit after that. So we get the warmest parts of the afternoon in the mid to late afternoon. We get the coldest parts of the day actually just after sunrise, not right before, just after, because the sun hasn't quite started heating everything yet. So that's the most time that the ground has had to cool down.
Yep. And Brian, if you really want to get in the weeds, which I suggest you do on this one because it could be fun, it's a topic called the Earth's radiation budget or the energy budget. And what you're going to find is a bunch of arrows going up and down all the time. And everything's driven by the sunlight. So you're going to see a whole bunch of balance of forces going on. But that was a great example, Jan, of kind of a day-to-day look at things, because our calendar days operate almost in the same way our calendar does, where things are lagged a little bit there from when we get our daytime highs to when we get our morning lows. We're getting down here to the final 3 minutes or so of this episode, but we did want to, bring in something a little bit heavier here that we haven't really had, much time to discuss, and also have just not really gotten to it. Just kind of the importance of the NOAA in what we do in weather, but more importantly, how you live your daily lives and how the NOAA can really give you a good experience of what the weather is all about. And I think this is going to be a little eye-opening discussion here, Jan, about just the importance of NOAA and how we see it in our daily lives. Would you like to start, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, I can start. So
Go for it.
NOAA, or NOAA, as a lot of people might know them, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they do so much for us, right? Based on their name alone, atmosphere, ocean, right? They do a lot of different things. We're not even going to get into the oceanic kind of stuff, which is a whole other gamut of incredible research and stuff that they're doing. But as far as the atmosphere and weather goes, if you're looking at a weather app, if you're looking at weather data on your local TV broadcast, that data has NOAA behind it, right? They power so many of our weather observation systems. If you're looking at radar, no, I don't care what app you're using, what channel you're watching, even if they claim to have their own radar, you're looking at a NOAA radar, 100%. And even if they do have a separate radar, which very few do nowadays, you're still probably looking at NOAA radar data, at least in some capacity, between their composite radar or stuff like that. As in terms of forecasting, all the modeling that's coming across is at least not all of it, but some of it is coming through NOAA. We have our American models that are coming through NOAA. So that's just the very basics of what you might think about in terms of weather data, as well as things like watches and warnings. Those are all issued by NOAA. Nobody else is allowed to issue their own warnings. That's kind of one of the things that really sets them apart. But again, there's even more than that. Kai, you really dive into it a little bit here on one of your recent posts.
Yeah, well, and I mean, there's just so many different things, because in my world now too, I'm more displaced from operational forecasting, more into the forensic side now, which means I have to go back in the past to start looking at things. And so when we try and reconstruct what's going on in the atmosphere, we're looking at archived weather balloons. We're looking at archived aviation statements. The National Weather Service has an aviation weather center that is all plugged into all the area airports around the region. We're looking at NOAA fisheries. We're looking at ocean data and water data. We're also looking at old storm reports, archived storm reports. There's actually a database called the Storm Events Database. And if you don't think they're important, I can guarantee you they are, because I've seen how many digits go into some of these claims that I work. There's a lot. You're talking some claims are 7 or 8 digits long, and that's just for one location. And you multiply that by a huge disaster that comes through, and all of a sudden you got a lot of money at stake, and you want to make sure that data is correct so that we wind up getting in a situation that we've got good, accurate records of what's going on. So it's just one of those deals where obviously there's some spots in NOAA right now that, I even went just past week to go look at an archived weather balloon, and I couldn't find one. They used to launch it at that site. Now they don't. So it does happen, but I would just encourage you that if you're checking weather at all, to your point, there's a really good chance that data is already ingrained into whatever you're doing. And we just want to make you aware that it's out there. And I think you'll notice that type of government data more in your life than you will maybe other things. And it's just really important to know where some of that data comes from and how trustworthy it is. Plus, the NOAA NexRad radar is some of the best radars in the planet. Absolutely. They're really excellent. And our fleet is aging right now. And there are some times that radars go down, and sometimes they go down at inopportune times. And if you're down a radar and you got a line of storms coming, that's a problem. So it's really important to think about it as we're deep into the storm season. We didn't even touch on hurricanes, but that's a whole other branch.
I think this is going to be a discussion topic.
Well.
We have to carry over another week or two, because there's so much that goes into it.
But just think about it. Think about it next time you're on your favorite weather app and you go, well, that's probably some NOAA data. And by the way, NOAA scientists are pretty cool people. I've got a lot of friends at the National Weather Service that we still text back and forth frequently about things. And a lot of people don't know that behind the scenes, I would be messaging back and forth on our platform that's supposed to be used for work, how the Minnesota Vikings doing. How's your sister's health doing? And we would go back and forth and just talk. And sometimes it just made for great conversation. And when you work the overnights, there's not a lot of people around, and sometimes you need that. So just think about that when you're on your weather app next. Okay, we're at the end of our podcast here. This may have been the longest one we've ever done together, Jan, but that's okay.
I think so.
We want to encourage everybody to submit your questions, whatever kind of feedback you have for us. We started the program talking about some really neat reviews that you all left. We love to hear genuine feedback, how we can improve. If you'd like to tell your friends and family about it, we will not say no. We'll certainly thank you for that. And until you hear from us next time, you can always email us your questions to weatheredquestions@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening in. We'll talk to you next time.